Hi, so I want to talk about an act. Sorry, I just had a sneezy fit, as if I got cat fur, which is possible that it was around here somewhere. But anyway, I did pet the cat earlier, so I could have left. Anyway, I thought I was well cleared up, but I could say I was going to cough again. So okay, um, I want to talk about an example of an act of will. And just how subtle it is, And free will, I never liked that term. I use the term willpower. Um, and it's clear that, we're constrained by all sorts of things. We have to keep breathing, stuck to the earth, constrained by what we know or what we don't know. And this will kind of describe the constraint and what I think is your subtle but decisive role, one of them, in a particular situation where this comes up. And it's a situation where you want to have a different reaction to some sort of event. Let's say somebody picks on you in some situation, and you don't like the way that you're reacting. And that could be either that you're too passive, or you laugh at the joke at your own expense, and you don't really think it's funny, and then you feel bad, or weak or humiliated or whatever. Or it can be that you blow up and get really ferocious and realize later that you overreacted. There's a better way to react. Like, he was being an asshole, but then I looked like the asshole. I want to just deal with it just right. So he's the one that looks like the asshole. Or maybe you're trying to be enlightened. It's like, nobody's going to look like an asshole. I'm going to solve it or whatever. You're not going to, in a moment, have control of choice in that way. You're not going to be able to invent new choices. The choices that you have at that moment, you have to invent ahead of time, right before the event. So this never happens the first time there's a situation. It's not even going to happen the second. It's going to happen after there's been enough situations that your brain recognizes it as a situation, as something that can happen more than once, right? You're going to ignore the details that can only happen once, like what day on the calendar was it? And you're going to notice things that are repeatable. Experiences with a particular person, or with a particular kind of person, or a particular comment, or a particular situation, like, being on a stage, public speaking in front of a classroom or something, giving a presentation. I don't know, I'm talking about public speaking anxiety as opposed to social anxiety. It's basically those kinds of things. Anything you might call in a situation that creates anxiety. Like, the dominoes are set up right then. And, maybe there's 2 domino sets and you have a little bit of a moment to choose the A or the B. But pretty much, it is dominoes at that point. But what you can do is then, when you're calm, when it's not going on, in a safe space where you're not going to say anything, you have the freedom to think it over, think through other possibilities. How would you like to act? What would you want your reaction to be? You can think about it. If you think about it realistically and you can visualize those situations, and you do have to be realistic. You can't say, well, I'd just like to punch him in the face and he's bigger than you, or you don't want to go to jail or whatever. It can't be a fantasy. It has to be something that you could really actually conceivably do, or else when you get to that moment, your fight or flight brain, for its own, based on its own, I like to use the word metabolism, but if you're not a very violent person, then thinking you're going to crush his skull in is not a good, it just doesn't suit you. But, my belief is you can find something, more than one thing that'll suit you. And I would say visualize doing those things, more than one of them. If the situation comes and you had too many options so you couldn't pick, and then you reverted to whatever the original automatic was, well, make sure it's fewer of these options. And in the end, if it's a really serious thing, choose one of them and imagine and rehearse it in your mind. Now, people don't want to do this And some people do it too much, something along these lines. Here's the two pitfalls of this for these two kinds of people. One, and I think this is most people that I know, but then I like mellow people, so maybe it's just mellow people that are like this, is they don't want to be upset. They don't want to upset themselves. It's like it's bad enough that they're in this situation, this person comes and upsets them all the time, that they have to think about it, or deal with it rather, why do they want to have to think about it? Oh, the computer lights out. Got dark in here. I was like, what is it dark? Was that one lit? Interesting. Oh, there they go. Anyway, they don't want to think about it, right? You know, it's like my day off. Why should I think about that problem? Okay, so the pitfall of that is you end up only thinking about the things that make you angry when you are angry. And that anger and fear, the humiliation, whatever is the emotional underpinning of the thing that makes it a problematic situation for you, you you're it's making you irrational. So you're only ever thinking about it when you're irrational, right? Namely, when you're already having the automatic reaction you don't want to have. And so it's that attitude that's thinking about your options, and it already has proved itself not that great at choosing an option that satisfies you in the long run or the big picture. So I don't really see that viable as myself, but I get that. The other pitfall, of course, is that you have the anxiety, and since you don't say the right comeback in the elevator, you just pour over it and beat yourself over the head about, what you did wrong and what you could do, and you overthink it. And then when the situation comes, again, if anything, you're over anxious. Even if you did pick something that you were going to do, it was sort of a fantasy, and then you got scared, and you can't do that either. So, really, I think you just need to take small amounts of time when you want to do something different. And it doesn't have to be something anxious. It could be that, you're juggling, and when you try to do this one juggling move, you're always missing the third ball. You can only do, and try to figure out, well, I'm going to move my right hand slower. Just choose one thing. And then when you're in that situation, you can try it, but there's no reason to think it over and over and over and over. Like, time box, we call it in programming, put a little time box around how long you're going to think about it. So do consciously take some of your calm, happy time to think about the things that give you anxiety. Use that time to visualize, like alternate versions of these experiences and what would make you satisfied in them going better. And including you could just say, well, I don't want to engage with that person. I'm just going to not let it have that emotional effect. When he says that, I'm going to feel like I'm glad I'm not a rude person or whatever, And keep it short with the time boxing. Do the visualization. Try it again. Sometimes these things never happen again. Sometimes we're wrong. It was a false pattern that we thought we'd see, and you won't even have to use it. But if it does happen again, I guess you'll have another chance to think it over again. And this is a way that you are actually using your will. So it's not like people classically think of, I'm deciding at the moment which way to go. No, you're deciding what structures. You're deciding how to put the linkages together. You're the one setting up the dominoes. Right, so you have to set the dominoes up ahead of time so when the right situation comes along, you push the right domino and you go into the reaction you can live with. Of course, there's all sorts of other things like people's expectations. They always want to come out on top. I want to come out on top. I want to come out on top. That'll never spiritually work. You got to have to want to come out even. You want to have things are even. You want to come out where that guy feels they got a decent deal too. Right, but most people aren't spending their time doing that, thinking about that. They're fantasizing about how to crush that guy, and he's the one humiliated. It's like that is never wherein the solution actually lies. So yeah, it's an act of will.